Have you ever held a seashell close to your ear and heard something more than the whisper of waves? Some cultures believed that sound wasn't an illusion, but a message, a memory, a voice carried across centuries, waiting for someone to listen. This is the story of a girl and the shells that changed everything she believed about the ocean. But before her story begins, we need to go back, thousands of years back, to the cultures that believed shells were living archives. From Polynesia to the Mediterranean, from the Maya to the first island peoples of Southeast Asia, shells were more than ornaments. They were a bridge between humans and the sea. And some claimed the shells could speak. But why would a girl today hear the same echoes? Her name was Mira, a quiet girl who felt more at home near the water than with people. Every weekend, she searched the coast for fragments of forgotten life. Until one day, she found a shell unlike any she had seen, its surface carved, not by waves, but by hands. When she placed it against her ear, the world shifted. It wasn't the sound of the sea, it was rhythmic, patterned, almost like a voice trying to form words. Mira didn't know it yet, but she was hearing something ancient. Something every culture before her had recognized. Across the Pacific, children were taught that shells whispered the memories of ancestors lost to the ocean. In Greece, conch shells were used in ceremonies to call the past. And in Southeast Asia, shells were believed to store the last breath of the drowned. To Mira, these were stories, until the day the shell answered her, with a whisper that wasn't hers. Scientists will tell you the sound inside a shell is simply ambient noise resonating through curved geometry. They're right, but not entirely. Because shells also preserve something extraordinary. Pressure signatures, tiny compressions left by centuries of waves. To ancient cultures, this was memory, a living diary. To Mira, it was a message, a repeating pulse. So she recorded it. When slowed down, stretched, and filtered, the pattern became clear. It matched an acoustic ritual used 2,000 years ago by an ocean-facing culture that no longer exists. The village of Mira lost to the sea. Their shells were carved with spirals representing tides, storms, memories of the departed. Mira realized her shell belonged to them. And the whisper she heard a chant, a fragment from their ceremony of returning waves. A ceremony performed to remember those the ocean kept. But why would this shell reach Mira thousands of years later? Because shells travel, carried by storms, currents, and time. This one carried a memory waiting for someone who would listen deeply enough. And Mira was that person. Because some stories aren't heard with ears, but with presence. And the shell was ready to tell the rest. That night, Mira dreamed of water. Of waves rising higher than they should, of voices calling across the wind, and of a village swallowed by the sea. When she woke, the shell was warm. Scientists call this pareidolia. Heritage researchers call it oral memory. Anthropologists call it culture echo. But Mira simply called it a message. She returned to the shore, And this time, the shell didn't whisper. It sang. A melody older than language. A melody created by people who once lived with the tides, not against them.
The sun has been good to us.
The shell wasn't remembering tragedy. It was remembering home. And it was asking Mira to share what it carried. Not the sound, but the story. The more she listened, the more she realized the shell wasn't speaking to her. It was speaking through her. It wanted to be heard by a world that had forgotten how to listen to the ocean. And the memory it carried was not a warning. It was a reminder. A reminder that entire civilizations once lived with tides, not above them, not against them. Every shell on their shores was a lesson, a teacher, a storyteller shaped by the sea. And now one of those teachers had found Mira. Because sometimes the ocean chooses its listeners. As she held the shell, Mira felt the rhythm again. Steady, pulsing, ancient. So she replicated the sound, the way the old cultures once did. Every pulse echoed across the tide pool, as if the water remembered it. In Nekara, this ritual was called calling the returning waves. They believed the ocean responded when humans spoke to it with respect. For centuries, the ritual faded, forgotten, buried. Until a girl accidentally performed it again. And something answered. Not a voice, not a spirit, not a ghost, but something far more real. The recognition of a pattern the ocean once knew. Because the ocean never forgets the hands that once lived beside it. And through Mira, a fragment of that relationship returned. She didn't keep the shell, she placed it back where she found it, at the edge of the ocean. Because some stories are not meant to be owned, they are meant to be passed on, and every wave is still carrying them.